Good afternoon. Prakash and I are going to walk you through a very exciting story powered by Databricks. So, it's not very often, in fact, that I walk into a room as a consultant and people say to me, I really want to focus on HR data, employees. It's the most important part of what I do. Well, in fact, over the past few years, it's been a topic of importance. And if you were here yesterday, you might have heard my colleague Neetu talk about this, that talent is a C-suite discussion, and a very important one. And so I think it's a little known secret that, in fact, there's a ton of power in employee data. In fact, the truth is somewhere between 40, 50, 60% of your base cost to run your business is in employee data. And so if you're spending already 50% of everything it costs to run your business, why aren't you focused on your employee data? 50% of your overhead could be saved, improved, optimized. That's really important. And so we're going to share a story with you that's powered here that really makes a lot of sense. So what's the context? We're working with a global franchise retailer who says to me 18 months ago, Rebecca, it is absolute nonsense that we can't measure our employees. I get GDPR, I understand employee privacy, that's essential, but I have no metrics to measure anything. How many employees I have, whether or not they're changing roles, whether they're taking training, are they driving impact to the bottom line? And that's the question. So this context came up strictly from a business perspective. 100% driven by the HR department, and one tiger who said, I don't care what it takes, I want reliable data every moment on my desktop, refreshed, that I can see and I can trust. Meanwhile, this same retailer is going through a transformation, a digital transformation, pretty typical, not surprising, but we're just Accenture working with the business team, nothing to do with what's going on over there. So over a number of now years, we're working to try to optimize this scenario. A little known secret. We started with a 3-month project to do nothing but understand the drivers. What is it you want to get out of this data? What's important to you? And so we identified all of those questions, 20 leaders, prioritized them, and said, what's the most important thing you want to see? The North Star is, I want to be able to tell what I need from my employees to drive higher customer satisfaction, to drive higher revenue, and ensure product quality. Tell me what it takes. What does that employee profile look like? Not the person, the profile. So we set up to try to decide what this looked like, and we looked at all the available data sets first within HR, because there's a ton of HR systems. You've got Workday or SuccessFactors, you have an ATS, you have learning management programs, you have customer surveys, you have employee surveys, all this data coming together. And the very first thing that we did was to make sure we could link employees to each of these data sets. So again, business driven, what can we get and how do we get it? Now, there's a couple of pain points that are really important here to say, ooh. Now listen, HR people, like they don't want data. They're not very data savvy. They don't really know what to do with it. Maybe that's one of the reasons that all of the data they have kind of sits somewhere and is not really curated. But I had a visionary. So after we started this process, the next biggest pain point that made us take 18 months to get to our North Star was data privacy and the immaturity of the company to manage that data privacy. So I'd say we'd probably been done in 6 months, but that's not the case. So, before I tell you this sort of easy to know statement, with the right data, we can actually start driving business outcomes. Now, I'm going to cut to the chase because I've only got another couple of minutes to tell you this, but I believe that there's so much value in this, and I don't have to have you believe me. I'm going to start with what we succeeded in this 18 months. And so, here's some of the amazing business outcomes that we now track. And the ability to track this is uniquely powered by Databricks. And my colleague here will tell you exactly what that means, but I really just want to highlight a couple of these and some that you don't see. So if you ask a typical HR person, one of the first things they're going to say is, why are people leaving? Yeah, that's why talent is on the C-suite question here. Why are people leaving? Well, let me tell you, we uncovered this amazing thing that said if an employee had been at this company for over 2.5 years and they started surging in learning, they started taking trainings and getting certified, they left within 3 months. They're like, oh my gosh, we've got really powerful people, they're training, they're learning up, we got to invest in them. So the moment they start taking all the training, they leave. Does that make sense? We have this on a loop to say when people start taking training, what's going on? Are they trying to go for promotion, which is what they thought? Nope, they're looking for another job. Not exactly what you expect out of data. One of the reasons you have to have these models up and running consistently to share that. Now, the next thing I will just share, besides you can see these, cut the time down, suddenly have it, because we're part of a data ecosystem, because we were driven only by the business need, we had to start looking for those business outcomes. And so we've done analysis about what impact is there on product quality when we have high turnover. The cost of products breakage, it's a retailer, right? So plenty of products out there. As people turn over, the product quality goes down and the cost of damage goes up. What do you do about that? You'll see this stat up here that said, we've really focused on making sure we focus on retention and areas where contractors come in, where people doing the inventory and the supply chain are turning over very quickly. There's a high cost of damage. So we focused on how do we really keep that retention and what are we doing to do that? A direct business outcome, right? We're saving cost, we're increasing product quality. Next thing is they do training about product quality, about all kinds of things about how you engage with the customer. And we've been measuring customer satisfaction as it's rated across 120 countries and thousands of stores. And when we do training around interfacing with the customer, immediate customer satisfaction bounce 2, 3, 4 points. Amazing to see that. And with it, we see these tiny surges in the exact products they're trained in. Direct linkage to that bottom line. So I just wanted to start with that. Here are some of the things that we started looking at, but that driven by the business is the start of this success story. But what did it actually look like and why is Databricks so important?
So we have just seen this story that a business use case so necessitated that we needed to bring in some of the basic data strategy that can help solve the problem that we've lived through the day-to-day. And the beauty of this problem statement was that the Databricks was at the cusp of modernizing its lakehouse. And with that modernization in pipeline with the Databricks, we brought in the power of Accenture. We strategized the entire program. We designed a solution from scratch, a greenfield solution that achieved the kind of the business outcomes that Rebecca just talked about. And next, what I am going to walk you through is an architecture through which we navigated and solved the problems and achieved the business outcomes that we just saw. So I'll quickly glance over this because this is where the whole transformation started, the part of the lakehouse. And our business was quick to understand that this is what they want to achieve. And they were very nervous because they are so non-technical, so much functional heavy person that they don't understand what does raw, refined, bronze, gold, silver means. But they wanted two things, is that their business as usual should not be impacted and that they should have control over all of the data that they own. And that necessitated us to sort of start on a data product journey where we transform their data, but we made sure that their data control resides with their respective business units. We don't take any control away from them. They know who they are talking to, who the data consumers are, and who they are granting access to. So if you look at this architecture, we have shifted most of the principles of the data product and the data mesh to the left, right at the source, that the data producers has complete right over how the data travels and traverses to the entire architecture right at the data consumption layer. And we have made this so generic. Um, the business was using Power BI as one of their trusted source, but then they had this nervousness about if we bring in more people, they all not be Power BI savvy. So how do we bring in more assortment of services, still ensure that the governance stays the same that we have right now? So we bifurcated all of these into a very modular component such that if you ever have a policy change, you can implement into that part of the component and then scale from there on. So if you look at the core of this, the core of this is where the data product, by the three layers, raw, which is the bronze, refine, which we call it as a core data product, and the derived data product. At this very layer, regardless of which data zone you are, you can share your data, the governance for and the control for which lies with the source, the business unit, to any of the consumption services or the layers that you want. And if at the end, if you want a marketplace in place to be effective, you can create a marketplace so that business users have the ability to search what data they have available. They can provide the feedback on the data, they would know what data they need, and they would be able to request and provision new data to the marketplace. And all of these governance, management, oversight lies across all of these layers in different hubs that we have. And because of the modular level of the design, there is a lot of scope of creating the accelerators in between based on how you progress and matures in your journey. And if you are a data person, you would have understood and you would have lived through this pain where you have developed the entire architecture through 6 months, 12 months, 18 months of program, your data pipeline is up and running, but then the business comes back that, hey Prakash, it's been running good, but now you are scaling, how do I do that? And your components are so tightly coupled with each other that you say, oh, I need another 6 months, and business goes like, I invested millions of dollars all these months, and you're saying you're another next 6 months and this much of dollar. Are you good enough? Do we need to find someone else? Our architecture, because of its modular level, sort of spins, make the data provisioning and creation of the data pipeline very agile, very fast, and ensure that while we add new features to the business requirements, scale it up, the business as usual is never impacted. And when the business wanted the control, this was also when the Databricks was coming along with the Unity catalog. And they had no idea of what the enterprise, and I'm talking about the business problem, we are talking about the business managed applications. They had no idea about what the data governance and management are. But they were sold out that we are going to be using Databricks Workspace. The perfect use case where the Unity catalog thrives is that if your entire data pipeline and architecture is on Databricks Workplace, this works like the best because you don't have integration with other services. This provides you most of the features that you need. You don't need, say, Collibra or any other tool to integrate this enterprise-wide. This is Databricks, data workspace focused. There are few things that we designed. We ensured that our source data is always domain and application specifics. Our data is always designed such that the business units has an entire lineage on how the data is segregated across different units, different zones. And then because this is one of the European client, we needed to make sure that all of these GDPR and other regulatory bodies that has policies across this architecture and the policies that we implemented, all of these adhers to those regulations and regulatory requirements. Now, what are the benefits that it brings? When Unity Catalog is specific to the Databricks workplace, it works wonder, and it brings in all of the things that a business person who is very technically challenged, they understand technology, but they can't go enterprise-wise, technically competent person. Unity Catalog gives them the most of the basic things. It creates your meta store, it cataloging, gives you central control on the data set that you need, They can control all of these permissions at the fine-grained levels. They can audit every few months as how their data is being consumed, accessed, or requested. And because of the workspace being very homogeneous, this also leaves a lot of space to automate your processes over the time as you progresses. And when the data keeps accumulating, your data lineage is so embedded into the system that you don't need to every 6 months invest money and time and effort in ensuring that you're auditing your data lineage and that it is up to date. Should there be an audit need for them to look into that? Yeah, and we'll bring in I and Rebecca as to what were the aha factor, what were the wow moment when we finally rolled out, and you can see whatever we have this on stage, where like we were sitting in a boardroom in a design room having the application go live, and they were like, wow, Rebecca, Prakash, we are seeing the wonders that we wanted to see. And Rebecca, you can speak to some of those. Yeah.
So this really amazing story is around HR. Can I just see a wave of hand who actually works in HR data? Is that a couple of you? And it's really so overlooked, and part of it is just the data savviness of those users, but being driven by that, staying away from words like, are you the data owner? Are you the one who's going to decide governance? Those kind of words freak them out, and you have to kind of step back from that and talk about, well, but you're the only person who has authority. You know exactly what this data means. Let's put you in charge of it because you understand it so well. And then set it up in a way that it's linked properly. That was our first data exploration. Where can we find the connections to things like those data outcomes? And so now we have a data scientist who says, 25 years in the business, I have never been happier than working with Databricks. We all share the same code, we all look at the same data, we understand what it means, and I can run these things continually to look at, are people about to leave? And our CHRO said, I was kind of saying, I hope someday we can look at business outcomes. I didn't think you'd actually deliver it to me. I just was reaching for it. And it's really facilitated by this place. And finally, the data engineer comment I just want to throw in there is, after 25 years of doing this, I never want to work in big data again without Databricks. I go, what are you, paid by Databricks to say that? That's kind of crazy. So, pitfalls. After looking at these and knowing we're almost out of time here, I'm going to repeat the line I say all the time. Perfect is the enemy of good. Precision is the enemy of progress. If you sit around waiting for it all to work, like in the days of Teradata, for those of you who used to work there, I'll just tell you, precision is the enemy of good. It's the enemy of progress. Don't wait until it's perfect to do it. Start moving forward. And if you're technical people, which of course people here typically are, please partner with your business. Please understand what they want and help them get it. You're the enabler. They can't do it without you. It's not a separate process, but they should be at the core of deciding what gets done. And so, where do we go next? We've set this domain up. We're in the heart of the middle of the business, and we're interviewing and working with the owners of sales data, the owners of the entire stores that we run. What are the questions you want to know that our employees impact? And probably the most shocking one I'll just leave is product data. How do we align what happens with you as a product owner and all the times your employees touch it? And how can we actually measure that? Interesting questions to move forward with.
Thank you.